Testing, 1, 2, testing. Hello, everyone. This is Gamma from the Gamma Effect YouTube channel. Just started a new channel. I appreciate everybody for joining and listening to our live broadcast. Today, we're going to talk about the difference between the U.S. dating and living, as well as today, we're going to talk about the difference between dating in the U.S. and living, as well as China. Believe it or not, oh yeah, China. Dating and living in China, pros and cons, goods and bads, the behaviors, the culture, big difference. So my name is Gamma for the Gamma Effect, and the reason why I'm talking about China is because I moved there in 2014. Lived there for about 5 years or so. And throughout that time, I engaged in a culture. I worked, I lived, I traveled. I went out to clubs. I learned some of the language. And, believe it or not, I had a girlfriend. I dated out there, and I had a lot of homies. We wouldn't call passport bros back then. We were just brothers from all over out there. New York, brothers from Detroit, brothers from down south Texas, California. And we vibed as much as we could. So what I've done is introduce my brother Jojo, who I met out there, and he had a different experience. Let me see if he's here. Jojo, are you there?
How's it going?
What's up, Jojo? How's it going, man?
Been great.
What you been
Living.
up to lately?
Just finished up school, second year. Now in North Carolina, hanging out. Just about to play baseball again, the summer league down in Miami.
Why don't you tell the audience here on YouTube your background, kind of how you grew up and how you know anything about China?
So I was born in the U.S. I was born in Boston. My mom is Filipino. My dad's Italian from New York. And I lived in Jersey until I was about 6 and 7. And I was kind of stuck in or at least my family was. Our family was kind of stuck in the everyday U.S. routine where we make not much money to live with a paycheck to paycheck. And, we weren't really living life and exploring much. My dad was a little bit, but, I haven't seen much of the world yet. So in 2010 or 2011, I moved out to China and I lived there for my next 11 years before I moved back to the U.S. for college.
Okay, so you lived in China for 11 years.
Correct.
Wow. Okay, so what age were you when you're in China? What ages?
So I was there 7 years old, 7 or 8, until I was 17.
Oh wow. Okay. Those are
Yeah,
perfect age. So you completely like most of your development years were there in China.
correct. Yep.
Do you speak the language at all?
Speak it fluently.
Fluently.
Right.
Okay. So 你会说中文吗？
Oh, yeah.
会啊。
对，
现在你做什么？
我现在在收发坐下跟你聊天。
非常好，非常好，很棒啊。Okay. So two Mandarin speakers, and we got another brother who's we'll get up a little later, and we'll talk a little bit with him, and I think he speaks some Mandarin as well. Okay, so very interesting. So dating and living in China, what would you say the biggest difference is as far as dating? Or no, not even dating. Let's say living in China, just living.
That's that's huge. I mean, it's everyday life. Uh, Obviously, it depends where you live in the U.S. Or anywhere else, and depends where you live in China. But honestly,
Right.
just the everyday culture, the city, your work, how society works together is a lot different than anywhere else. It's definitely a culture shock for the better. Definitely for the better. I definitely learned a lot, but yeah, I feel like you
So
as well.
You said you learned a lot. In what way?
Um, how Chinese people, connect, what they like to do for fun, how Chinese people connect with foreigners, and then how foreigners connect with themselves as well. Um, it's it's a very different lifestyle of how people go to work and how people enjoy themselves. It's just also a different vibe too. It's a very different vibe, and it's a very interesting vibe that I feel like a lot of people are missing out, not traveling.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. Um, when I moved to China and was living there, for me it was imperative that I learn the language as soon as possible because there weren't that many English speakers in China. Did you have the same sort of experience, or were you in a English intensive environment?
So when I first moved out there, I was in Xiamen, a little outside of Xiamen, the city. It was in Chenzhou, and yes, it was definitely a little bit more tough because I was living a little more in the countryside, and it would be nice to have be fluent in the language. As soon as I moved more south to Dongguan, it was like a little bit more of an international like environment, a little bit more Western. Um, but obviously, of course, wherever you want to go, you kind of want to at least pick up a little bit of the language.
But okay, so when you it depending on where you're at in China, determines how much actually English you can use versus Mandarin you could use.
Correct, correct.
Now, when you compare just kind of the normal day to day interactions as far as just talking to people and getting things done, how would you compare the U.S. To China?
There is definitely a lot of benefits to getting things done in China. Uh, First of all, a lot of things are cheaper.
Mm.
So, everyday groceries, transportation, public transportation for that fact is a lot easier. I mean, you don't have to worry about, uh, owning a car, uh, and all that, and the insurance, all these added extra fees.
Oh
There's a
yeah.
lot of, it's very convenient there. Very, in many ways, it's very convenient to get things done. And there's a lot of resources that are very hidden and slept on, I should say. Very slept
Yeah,
on.
I agree. When I was in China, the big city environment, I was always in a big city. I was never in like a smaller village. But the fact that there's so many people, it made everything need to be convenient, right? Like in the US, you pretty much have to have a car for the most part, unless you want to do the Uber thing. But they have the fast trains, the bullet trains, they got the normal trains in the city, they got buses, and they got subways, metros. So yeah, just the basic moving around seemed to be a lot easier and a lot simpler, as opposed to the US. Was that your experience?
Yeah, it was. It was. And it's definitely why China is like advancing very, very rapidly.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
yeah, they definitely make it very convenient for a lot of their citizens, Western, foreigner, both. I mean, foreigner and then local as well.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, so as you were growing up there, um, do you think there were like weird moments? Were there like things you needed to watch out about talking or speaking about, since in the West you got a lot of freedom of speech, but there it's a little more controlled? Were there like things you needed to make sure you stayed in line with?
So a lot of people ask me this, and it's actually really interesting. A lot of people here in the U.S. say, "Yeah, it's free, freedom of speech, freedom of speech." I would be scared to go to China because I would be in trouble there. But honestly, you don't really hear much about the Chinese policies, and most of them don't even affect the foreigners. Yeah, there's here few here and there, but a lot of the policies kind of affect the locals. Um, so there isn't much really to speak about them if you're minding your own business and just so
Okay.
you're yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not how the media here paints the picture as if it's such a powerful oppressive regime and people are have less rights or can't do this or can't do that. You don't have that experience, I assume, huh?
Yeah, I did not have any experience of deportation or anything like a serious matter like that. Honestly, everyone was very welcoming and acceptive. Were you were
You
you in
know,
the same, were you in the same boat or?
I did have an experience, only one. I was coming off the subway going home, and right when I was walking up steps, they picked me out specifically because I was not Chinese, right? I was a foreigner. Two police standing there, like a little sting or something. And they rounded me up real quick and were asking for my documents. And at the time, I didn't have my passport in my pocket. The company that I was working with had my passport because they were processing my paperwork for a visa, which is normal, but it just happened to be bad timing, right? Like, I think
True.
it was a Friday and I was going to get my passport back on Monday. Who would think like a few days that you would get busted? But that's exactly what happened. So, they rounded me up and they were seemingly upset, even though looking back on, I think it was kind of a good cop, bad cop kind of acting
Right.
situation.
Right.
But yeah, they were like, you got 10 minutes to get your documents here or you're going to jail. So
Wow.
um, I didn't have internet. I think like the Wi-Fi on my phone had just went out. Ironically enough, so everything was going downhill for a second. So I'm like, yo, there was a mall, there was a shopping mall, and in China, all the shopping malls for sure have Wi-Fi, like
Hmm.
for the public. So I'm like, let's just walk over there and I can get the Wi-Fi. Then I can call some people. I'm not far from my home or from my job, so I know I can call somebody. And at first they said no, but I'm like, look, there's no way. Like, you might as well take me to jail if you can't let me go over there and get the Wi-Fi. She's like, why don't you have Wi-Fi? I'm like, look, lady, I just don't have it. And so she's like, fine. And then once again, good cop, bad cop. So they're acting super mad, right?
Right.
Um, I get the Wi-Fi and I get into my group chat with the company at the time. I worked for a sports company. I was a director of coaches, and I'm calling the people first. I called the person who directly had my passport. I messaged her directly, and they got a social media out there called WeChat. So I WeChat her, and she's not getting it via just writing the words on a screen. She's not understanding the urgency. So I call her, and meanwhile, you understand there's a language barrier. Her English isn't very good, and at that time, I didn't speak Mandarin. This is when I first got there.
Right.
And so I'm trying to get her to understand, like, lady, I'm with the police, but I don't think she understood the word police. I don't think she knew what that meant. But
Yeah.
I'm like, you really need to give me my passport. You need to bring it here. I'm not too far from the office. And she's like, okay, I'll bring your passport and I'll leave it at your desk in your office. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I need you to bring it here right now. And I only have 10 minutes or they're going to take me to jail. And she was like, nice little Chinese girl, didn't understand. And so I go to the group chat. Then I go to the group chat. There's like, I don't know, 400 people in there. And I'm telling everyone, like, this is a scenario. I'm sending pictures of the police. Like, somebody needs to bring me my passport, or someone at least needs to come here and talk to these guys so we can buy some time. So everything gets rolling. Within 30 seconds, I see them messaging back and forth. Bing, 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 bing. It's hitting a group chat. And the ladies bother me. The police ladies bother me. Like,
Mhm.
what's taking you so long? Like, you know, if you don't get this, you got 8 minutes now. If you don't get this, you're going to jail. And I'm like, well, you said I got 8 minutes, right? She's like, yeah, 8 minutes. I'm like, okay, lady, leave me alone. I got 8 minutes. Like, don't bother me for 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And she didn't like that, but she understood what I was saying. Like, how am I supposed to get this done and you keep talking to me?
Right.
And so after like 1 minute, this guy comes screaming. He's running full speed through the mall. I'm on one end of the mall, but I can see him on the other side of the mall running full speed. So I'm like, okay, maybe that's for me. In the meantime, Chinese people are walking by with their phones, taking video, taking pictures. It's just the scene you would think. A big, dark, melanated man who's like 6 foot tall, 250 pounds, is standing there with the police, right? And
Yeah.
Chinese people who are like a lot smaller, and it's a homogeneous society. So I stick out like a sore thumb, and then I'm with the police. So it's creating a lot of attention. Everyone's noticing. But the guy gets there, and he's talking to the police, and the WeChat group is still pinging, and then everyone's calling me. The general manager calls me. One of the top sales lady calls me. Like all the people who can speak English, only some of them can speak English, right? But they're calling me, and I'm getting them on the phone with the police, giving the police my phone, and so it ends up we're able to stall. We didn't make the 10-minute timeline as far as getting my paperwork there, but at least I got Chinese people there to talk to him and let him know, like, he's with us, he's good, he's legitimate. Like, we just had his passport because we were processing his paperwork, and so probably about 10 minutes later, after the time limit ran out, they ended up bringing my passport. Police saw the passport. Okay. They gave me a thumbs up, and everybody just dispersed. And like within 30 seconds after my passport arrived, it was like a non-scene. Like I left, police left, Chinese people left. So end up being not a big deal, but it would have been a big deal if I didn't have my paperwork. But that was the only issue I ever ran into any sort of police encounters. And that was like just, following the law, just the basic parts of the law. It wasn't anything as far as racism, anything as far as treating me unfairly. They literally followed the law. Once the law was suffice, then it was no thing at all. Matter of fact, that was something I really enjoyed about China. Here's something we could talk about. That's something I really enjoyed about China was the police situation. I never was like in a situation with police anywhere overseas, actually. I've been to a few countries where they were aggressive, they were like authoritative or intimidating outside of like just enforcing the law like you would expect. So for me, that was a huge difference being in America versus being in China. In America, I remember when I first got my driver's license, being 16, I did like a rolling stop through a stop sign. Like I stopped, but like not quite enough. And I kept going. Police pulled me over, and I was literally 16 years old. Granted, I was like 200 pounds, 5'10". I was a big kid because I played ball, but they treated me like I was a severe threat. I had to have my hands on the steering wheel. They were speaking to me aggressively, coming at me like I was, how do I explain it? Like a threat, like
Right.
like a serious harm to be dealt with.
Right.
And yeah, like it was crazy. And I was like literally only 16 years old, and I had just rolled through a stop sign without stopping completely. I like slowed down to maybe 1 mile an hour. And in that situation, it's clear that there's no intent of anything harmful. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I was going home after work. I was in high school, and they're treating me this way, which is just ridiculous. But everyone knows the situation in the United. I think everyone in the whole world knows the situation
Right.
in America as far as those things. So that was a huge culture shock for me. I remember I noticed it. I was walking through a shopping mall, and I was getting messages for some business on my phone, and the police were doing like a drill. There was probably like 60, 70 cops, and they were there for some drill or something. And when I was walking by, my phone started lighting up, and where the police were where the seats were at. And I needed to sit down to kind of check these messages and get back to people. And so I just like walked through them, like not like, I was polite and was like moving my way through them, turning sideways and stuff. And then I sat down and they were all around me. It was like 60 police. They were everywhere. And they didn't care. They were talking about whatever they were talking about. And I was sitting there on my phone, and like a minute went by, and then I realized it. I'm like, holy crap. Like, I'm sitting here in the middle of all these police that I never had a second thought about it. In America, I would have walked the other way if I
Right.
seen that many police. And like in China, I'm walking to them because I think it's more convenient for me to go sit down over there than to walk around the block and sit down. So like once I realized that, I'm like, holy crap, like this is a whole different scenario. China is much more safer for a man like me to just
Right.
live day to day and deal with authorities and deal with people. So that's like one of the biggest dramatic situations that I noticed when I was in China.
Right. I completely agree. And I feel like it won't be just like for people of color. I feel like women as well, men, woman, anybody, can feel that safety there in China and a lot of the Asian countries. But there was definitely a vibe of equality from the police, like authority to citizen. There was definitely equality instead of like here in the U.S. There's a definite divide from police to like citizen, and I completely understand with the being pulled over for something very subtle.
Hmm.
Can't forget that huge flashlight up in your face and
Yeah.
hands on the steering wheel. No, I had that last year for doing something very similar. Um,
Oh,
so
do tell, do tell.
yeah, so I think it might have been, I don't know, maybe 5 over, 10 over, 10 over in a highway, and it was just like it might have been 70 and a 60, 65, and it was late night. It was a safe drive, very empty road, and it was very similar situation where it was
Right.
like very aggressive with
Right.
the questions needed. Like I still obeyed, but it was like, is this necessary? I know this is necessary. Yeah. In China, it's cool. Like you can kind of make the comparison to a little bit from police to refs in a sports game. When you
Right.
don't see the refs there, when they don't make a difference in the game, that means they refed a great game or they umped a
Right.
great game. So when the police are there and you don't like, they're not making a big scene. It's like they're having great authority. Like kind of like the example you said. Like, oh, I'd even notice. I was just trying to sit down and I didn't notice that 40 of them were, you know, doing something there.
Right. Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah. When yeah, like I agree with your analogy. Yeah, refs have the authority ultimately, but they're not there to take over the game. They should be there to, make sure everything's smooth. If things are smooth, then you shouldn't have any issue. You're speeding 10 miles over, like, okay, yeah, it's warranted for a ticket, but you know, they get like accusatory. I mean, we all know the deal. We don't got to beat a dead horse. We know how it is in America. Some people deny it, but everyone deep down knows.
Right. Right. I knew I was going 10 over. It was just in a safe environment in a highway and with nobody there. And I guarantee you, everyone, including police, do it.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, so that was a huge difference. Um, Gosh, I would say as well. I thought it was so much easier for me to network and meet new people and have them see me as a positive benefit based upon what they would get from me upon meeting me. Right? They didn't have a any sort of preconceived thoughts. They would just be curious and want to know who I am, and then I would articulate myself and connect with them, and then you know, Chinese people do a great job of networking. They they can connect you to people in a very serious way, in a very expedient way. So I always thought it was a lot easier to network and to do business in China than it is in America, for sure, for me at least.
Yeah, I agree. Even from foreigner to foreigner concept in China, it was like there was a common icebreaker of like when you're talking to another foreigner, oh, what are you doing here? And then if you end up doing the same thing just in different like companies or whatever, it was a very easy connection. Very easy connection.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah,
agree. Yeah,
those-
foreigners do a good job too out there.
yeah, yeah. But you're very correct with the Chinese. I mean, they're locals, so they definitely know more than us, and easy to branch out to anybody. Honestly,
Yeah, yeah, I agree 100%. So overall, would you say it was an enjoyable experience growing up there, or would you have preferred to grow up in America?
it was very enjoyable. It was. I mean, not many people can say I've lived in another country before 19. Nonetheless, been to
Right.
multiple, but and not many people in the U.S. can say I can speak another language.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, that's kind of embarrassing to me.
It is. Well, yeah, there's a lot of you probably heard it. Oh, I've took Spanish for 8 years, but I don't know much anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's embarrassing. I hate having that stereotype upon me when I'm abroad. I was just living in Thailand a little while ago, and like I made sure people knew at least I can speak Mandarin. Man, I probably don't know Thai, but I don't only speak English.
Right. Yeah, I completely get it.
Let's see. So, what about dating? Did you date when you were there? I know you were only 17 when you left, but did you date?
I did. I did. I am still currently dating my girlfriend that we met there. I met there.
Okay, okay. So
Yep.
you met her in China,
Correct. Correct. She's my neighbor.
and let's see who. So, is she Chinese, like a local Chinese girl, or
No, she's my mix exactly. Half American, half Filipino. We shared well that in general, and then also, living in China and being in an international school, we shared a lot of similarities. But yeah, she's my mix.
did you guys go to the same school?
We did not actually. We did not. We went to the rivals. We went to rival schools.
Where
Yeah,
did she
but
go?
she went to TLC.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, the Learning Center, and then I
Yes.
went to International School at Dongguan, as you know.
Oh, you went to International School Dongguan. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So that's where I met you at International School Dongguan. And Dongguan is a city in South China, just to let the audience know. City in South China, not too far from Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou. It's a pretty progressive city, I'd say. It's a good amount of Westerners there. And, it had a reputation maybe 10, 15 years ago of being kind of a party town or a fun type city, especially for foreigners. And then they kind of changed it and turned it into like a normal city, but there was still a lot of foreigners there and a lot of fun things to do. And people were, I think that the Chinese people there were pretty progressive or more open minded than a lot of places in China. Would you agree?
I agree. Dongguan is definitely, honestly, Southeast China in general. The Guangdong province is a very industrialized area, huge and developing, very industrialized, and yeah, it did have the reputation. I would say 10 years ago, maybe when I first moved there, but it's definitely a safe environment.
Yeah, I agree. So I see Coach Big 2023 is saying hello, and I'd like to bring him up and talk to him. I'm trying to figure out. Forgive me, I'm a little bit new to YouTube, so I'm trying to figure out how to bring him in to have a conversation and have him in a queue. Um, but let's keep talking. Hopefully, I can figure it out and bring him up soon. Let's see here. Okay, so you dated your girlfriend, that you met right there in Dongguan, and you guys have a lot in common. So was she the only girl you dated while you were in China?
No, I did not. I did date a local.
No, you did.
Right. Yep, I have. And then she was a different she was Australian born but Chinese descent, originally from Dongguan.
Oh,
So
okay,
she
Australian born, but from Dongguan.
correct,
Like her
Australia
parents
born.
are from Dongguan.
Yeah, yes. Her parents were born in Australia. All of them were, but they all grew up in Dongguan.
Oh, that's a different vibe. So she was
Right.
like foreigner and local, kind of at the same time.
Correct. She got both best of both worlds because her parents were fully Chinese, fully from Dongguan, but they were just all happened to be born in Australia.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so she had that mix. She's like Blade, like all the strengths, none of the weaknesses.
Right.
Okay, that's interesting. So I had a Chinese girlfriend. To compare to my dating experiences in America, it was very different, extremely different. Um, and don't get me wrong, in the last 2 years or so, three, gosh, to be honest with you, since 2015, I haven't really dated too much in America. And what I see on YouTube, I don't think I want to, is looking kind of crazy out here. Um, but my experiences in America is like women were, pretty ambitious, striving to be independent, pretty reasonably high expectations for what men need to do for them. And, social media was gaining some strength, so their options were growing. Now, this is back in 2015, so this is good 8 years ago. So it wasn't like it is now, but their options were growing, and their attitudes were growing, and it was getting unpleasant. That was one of the motivators. I wouldn't say it's definitely not why I left, but when I looked around at all the opportunities and the dating prospects and the whole nine, I definitely was motivated to just go see what else is out there. And then once I got to China and was there a while and started dating, I dated a nice lady, and she was the biggest difference was she was just so helpful. I think foreigners need a lot of help in China because of the language barrier and the culture divide. You just have to learn a lot before you can function normally there. And she was very helpful. She never told me no as far as helping me do something or get something done. And I was pretty ambitious. I was like starting a business out there and doing stuff that foreigners don't normally do. So I needed a lot of help. Um, she was ambitious herself. She had a job, and she really wanted to kind of figure out what she wanted to do in her career and do business herself. I wouldn't say she was traditional. A lot of YouTube brothers be saying they're going overseas and finding all these traditional women, but that wasn't my experience in China. I wouldn't say she was traditional. She was she's not like a Western woman, strong, independent type, and this and that. She wasn't like that, but it's like she was family orientated, super close with her friends. Was a hardworking lady, helpful and nice to her boyfriend, to me. But the culture was still very different. Like one-on-one conversations, like I guess romantic or serious or intimate conversations. Intimate just meaning like serious and about your relationship, to where you want to have like a sit down and one-on-one and kind of discuss something maybe that's bothering you, or maybe some things you want to adjust in your relationship. She was always kind of uncomfortable with that. She would want to be traditional Chinese in a way that where they go to dinner with friends, and throughout the conversation, like say you have a situation with your girlfriend, maybe it would be brought up in conversation in a very general, vague sort of way, and then she would pick up on that, and that would be the way of communicating. Or when you're first dating a Chinese girl, maybe it'd be like a group date, and I'm talking about a local traditional Chinese girl. It would be like a group date, and her friends would be there, and maybe your friends would be there, and you guys would go and have dinner at the big round table where you
Right.
can swivel the table, and everybody can get the food that they need on the table. You just swivel the table, and the food comes to you with the rotation. And after that, maybe you guys go to do some KTV, which is karaoke. You guys would be singing and drinking and just having a nice big group date, maybe 8 people or something like that. And the way they figure you out is their friends ask you questions and your friends ask them questions. And throughout that time, she's learning about you, right? Like you're saying what you're about, where you're from, what do you do for a living, kind of getting a feel for your culture and your values. But it's not necessarily you talking to her one-on-one or directly. Her friends and your friend, the whole thing is just kind of a social thing. And then she'll get the information from that. So everything's so indirect. So you're
True.
just looking at having fun. And then she'll decide if she likes you, and you decide if you like her a little more. And, maybe the second date or the third date, you get a one-on-one. But because of that base culture, it was kind of hard to like really engage serious conversation if you weren't together a long time. So maybe you're dating 1 month or 2 months. And obviously you guys have a different culture. So you probably need to iron things out more than the normal couple of a similar culture, because you need to figure each other out. But that takes a lot of communication on one-on-one. But because they have such an indirect way of dating, it would make them, I guess it would be kind of intense for them to speak that way. So it was kind of rough navigating it, to be honest with you. It's like I can't get through to her because she's a little intimidated to engage like that. But we got all these culture differences. For example, we went out to eat and we ordered something. I can't remember what it was, but it was fire. That shit was so good. It was some kind of fish or something. And I was tearing it up. Man, that joint was hot. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm going to kill this. And if you want some more, I'll just order more. Right.
Right.
She was mad as hell. She was so mad. And she was just like saying, like, you're not thinking of the other people at the table. Like you're supposed to eat some and then you make sure there's some left over for the other people because everyone shares food. But I was like, it's just me and you here. And if you wanted some, just tell me. Like I'll order more. I don't care. Like it probably only costs 30 UN or 40 UN or something, which is like $5 or something like that. I don't care. But I mean, that's just the culture. Like that's just how they eat. Because when you dig into the Chinese history, before they gain their wealth, there was times where families really counted on each other to eat. And you know how they say, "Need your fella, ma."
Yeah.
Like, have you eaten? Because it's like
Common greeting. Common greeting.
it's a common ingredient that's left over, which means have you eaten? Because they would really check in with each other and make sure they had something to eat. And then that would carry over into their like dinner etiquette and how they kind of took care of each other. And I'm over here just tearing it up because it was fire. It was bomb. And I'm just killing it. And she just thinking I'm crazy rude. She was so mad. And so that was something that she was mad about, but didn't tell me directly. I had to find out later. You know what I mean? And it was just like, so the indirect aspect along with the cultural difference really made it tough. And it was like, it's nobody's fault. That's just like their culture versus our culture.
Right. Right. There is I got obviously pros and cons for both. I mean, I found it interesting what you're saying about the Westerners like in relationship, and I kind of do see this, especially more with TikTok and all this, social media. If we break down relationships and like major factors, obviously like communication is going to be one of them, and then loyalty is probably another one, of course. And then I don't really see that much more in U.S. standards anymore. Like loyalty is rare here, and that is one thing I did see in Asia compared to the U.S. that there was a lot more loyal people in Asia.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. I can't fully agree because like I'm really not interested in dating too much in the US. It's got too many problems that can it's not even like I'm hating on the women, but when I see how the laws are made up and I see all the traps that are set up, like I don't even want to take a chance because I'm at the age where I want to have a family. And so when I date, I want to date for real, and I want to have babies, but I do not want to have babies under these U.S. laws because I want to be a family and I want to be a father, and I don't want to have someone with an incentive to break up a marriage because she can get this and can get that and she'll get custody and the whole nine. Like I don't even want that incentive. So because of that, but then like you said, they're not loyal. So with them not being loyal, with the way that the laws are set up and what they can take from you, just doesn't even make any sense. But I did notice a lot more loyalty in China and in the Philippines, but I did not notice that loyalty in Thailand when I was there. However, I was in a tourist type city. I was in Bangkok, which is big and it's touristy. Sometimes I went over to Phuket, and sometimes I went to Pattaya, and those aren't like those. How to explain it? Foreigners come and go there a lot, so I mean,
True.
it makes sense as to why there's no loyalty. But it felt similar to the United States because of that. But when I was in the Philippines and China, I definitely felt a much larger sense of loyalty, and like the girls are choosy, but once they choose you, it's like a firm decision. They really rock with you. So that was what I noticed as well. I agree with you. Oh, yo, I see Coach Winters is in the queue. Let's see if we can reach out to him. Coach Winters, can you hear us?
Hello?
How's it
Hello,
going?
hello.
Can you hear us?
Hey, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Speak up a little bit. You sound a little low, but yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear him, JoJo?
Yes, I can.
All right. How you guys
All
doing?
right. So we were just talking about the differences in dating in China versus America, and JoJo was just talking about the loyalty factor, the fact that like when in China and in Asia in general, there's a lot more loyalty. If a girl actually picks you and likes you, she'll rock with you a lot longer than his experience in United States with social media, and the loyalty factor is not really there because everyone's got so many options and DMs and all this craziness. Um, what do you think about that? And then after you answer that, can you give us your background on your experience in China, how long you were there, and what you know about it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there were definitely plenty of differences, probably most of them being like cultural. Um, but I will say in a lot of ways they were a lot more straightforward about what they wanted, half the time at least. Um, but it also, I don't know, it was individual basis. Like I had different experiences with different ones of them, so I can't really generalize too much. But I did live over there for 3+ years, almost 4 years, um, and was teaching and coaching sports as well at a really dynamic place called Fast Track.
Now, so just to give the audience a little background, I met JoJo in Dongguan. Coach Winters, where did I meet you at?
Oh, we met in Foshan actually, I
Now,
believe.
yeah, Foshan. Can you tell the people where Foshan is in China, like demographic wise?
Sure, yeah. So Foshan is just west of Guangzhou. You can get there by the subway. The subway system's pretty convenient as well. Um,
Yes,
might
sir.
take a
So,
little while, a lot of people.
yeah,
But
indeed.
it's right over there. Kind of busy, but not as busy as some place like Guangzhou would be.
Right. I think Guangzhou's got like 15 million plus. I think Foshan's like smaller, maybe 8 to 10 million, something like that.
Beautiful temples out there.
Indeed. Indeed. So we were all in the southern part of China, near, so the big area is the province is Guangdong province. So you got Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Dongguan, Foshan, places like that. These are like decent sized cities, probably at least as big as New York City or bigger, and not far from Hong Kong. So that's where we were, just to let our YouTube family know. and so the environment that we met in was pretty much similar. You know, we end up meeting in Foshan and knowing each other a while there, and then end up meeting up in Dongguan, and JoJo was in Dongguan as well, so we got this similar understanding of that uh, environment. Now, Coach Winters, did you speak Mandarin as well?
Yes, I did. I actually studied it in university, and studied abroad for a summer program while I was still in school, and then proceeded to live and work over there and improve my language as well.
Now, was that necessary? Did you feel
Um, it
how
kind of
lang-
just happened.
how necessary was the language? Is what I want to say.
It was very, very beneficial for sure. You can relate to people a lot better, discuss things with them. You can get around a lot better, of course, especially in a place where the culture is really so different from our own.
Right. I agree. I agree. Now, did you have a girlfriend there?
Yeah, I did for a couple years.
Oh, a couple years. Okay. So, what was the difference with whatever girlfriend you had, in the United States versus or not even a doesn't have to be a specific girl, but just dating in the United States versus your experience dating in China? What would you say the biggest difference was?
It's kind of a catch-22, but I would say like the directness, but sometimes not always direct. And again, I think it is really dependent on personalities in a way.
Hmm.
Um, but I think they were a little more direct about what they wanted, at least, and especially in terms of like commitments and things like this. You know, the culture itself is probably a bit stricter, um, and there's certain expectations with that. Um, but it always does depend. You know, it depends on their background and all those things as well.
Would you say overall their culture of women are more conservative or just as progressive as the U.S. women these days?
Um, that's an interesting question, especially just because uh, that country has changed so much in the last 30 years or so. Really rapid development and market changes, cultural changes. It's really kind of the first time, I guess, in like a modern sense that they've had access to a lot of, um, I don't know, conveniences and things like that that we are more used to enjoying, you know.
Hmm.
But it is really incredible because you think like 30 years ago, most of the places they were still doing agriculture and a lot of things like that, and now they're massive, uh, millions and millions of people, state of the art modern cities. It's really incredible.
Oh,
Um,
indeed.
yeah, so the pace of life is changing a little bit too, and I'm sure that there's effects on that as well. You know.
Jojo, let me ask you the same question. How do you feel about the level of progressiveness? Would you say Chinese girls are just as progressive as American girls, or are they more conservative overall in your experience?
I would go back to what you said earlier about the pickiness. I would say they are a little bit more conservative. Um, they choose wisely. They choose a little bit more wisely than the women in the U.S. A little bit less open about, I guess, jumping the gun and being more spontaneous with one guy. And if they were to talk to you, it'd be not only for one night, you know, at least for dating. If you're in a dating environment, so I would say a little bit more conservative.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, I thought it was a lot more conservative. I mean, just the way the women dress. I was dumbfounded when I came back here and I seen just the average girl and like, you know, kind of what they expect as far as how they dress, how they show themselves, Instagram, the whole nine. Versus you know, Chinese women were much more conservative in my mind. Of course, you got the exceptions to the rule, you know, here and there, but for the most part, I thought they were much more conservative in how they dressed. I thought they were much more um I wouldn't say more picky because I think American women are quite picky, but I think they were picky as far as um who they would who they would entertain. Like they would both be picky, but it seems to be a much bigger deal for a Chinese girl to actually give you a shot and kind of go down that road as far as anything physical, as far as any, like you said, it's never going to be for, it's not usually for one night. It's going to be a dating scenario. I don't think they stop dating one guy and go to a next guy like so quickly. And I definitely never seen them dating 4 or 5 guys at one time, or talking, not dating, but talking to, like whether it be messaging and things like that, 4 or 5 guys at one time and seeing 4 or 5 guys. Matter of fact, most girls that I dealt with, if they knew I liked them and they had a boyfriend, like they couldn't talk to me because they had a boyfriend. They wouldn't say that I have a boyfriend, but I'll keep you around as a friend. And then maybe, you know, if me and my boyfriend break up, then I can be next man up. I didn't have that experience in China at all.
True, true. There was no you're on the roster type of thing.
Right, exactly. And that was something when I first moved back here at the beginning of the pandemic. I gosh, some I went to a rally or something like that, or maybe a protest. You know, I was going crazy here with the BLM stuff, and I got invited to one, and it was a little Latina girl and like, you know, a Latina lady, a soldier. I can't remember her name, but had went missing and had bad things happen. And it was kind of a protest in her honor. I just wanted to go because the girl was cute and I was getting out of the house because, you know, we were all in the house at that time. And at when she dropped me off, you know, when it was all said and done, I didn't know it, but she brought her up her boyfriend. I didn't even know she had a boyfriend. And she brought him up. And I was like, oh, so in my mind, I'm like, oh, snap. Okay, she has a boyfriend. So there goes that. I wouldn't even try to holler at her. I think I met her on Facebook. But I was like, I wouldn't even try to holler at her, like get her number or nothing like that. So that's cool. And then, but in my mind, I'm thinking that's kind of weird. Like she like went out with me one on one, and we spent like 4 hours together. And you know, she had a boyfriend that whole time. That kind of bugged me out. And then I kid you not, maybe 6 or 7 days later, she messages me on Facebook and was like, guess what? I'm single. And I was like, oh, snap, you single? Like, y'all broke up? She was like, yeah. Like, it was a really good thing. She was happy about it or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, bet. Like, what's up? You trying to go hiking? We go hiking next month because, you know, it ain't too many people out there. And, like, it should be safe with the pandemic and all that. And she was like, okay. And like, you know, as I went forward with her, like it was cool. We dated for a while, but I was thinking like she had a man that whole time, and then like she like was still had me like in her back pocket, and then her and her man broke up, and she came and told me right away. And then I'm on a date with her within days of her breakup, and then me and her getting together. You know what I'm saying? It was like she was doing it all. Like she was a, how do I explain it? I was just being a man like any man would be, just asking out a girl, going to hang out. You know, she's cute, we like her. You know how guys do it. But it's up to the woman to make sure that she's operating in this way that's like respectful to her relationship and respectful to herself, and I don't know, even respectful just kind of overall. But that's what I was thinking. But I think I was thinking that way because I came from China, and in China I never had that experience where like a girl is kind of like entertaining me even though she has a man, and then as soon as they break up, I'm the first one that she calls, not just to talk but to tell me they broke up. So she was like, okay, I'm pulling you, you're up next, I'm pulling you out of the off the bench and I'm putting you in the starting lineup. You know what I mean? And at the time, I didn't even recognize it. I was like putting it together as we were dating each other, and feeling like it was odd. But I never saw that in China.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, why even be in a relationship if you're gonna, you know, like you said, I guess, entertain other men. Uh, but oh yeah, it's definitely interesting. The divide between the two. There isn't no holding rosters just in case this happens. It's like, then why be in a relationship if you're not all into it?
Yeah, yeah. I think in the U.S., I think relationships aren't really relationships. I think people are just, I don't know what they're doing, to be honest with you, man. I just know it ain't for me. And I'm not even like, I don't have any rage. I heard some guys go through red pill rage and go through all this kind of stuff when they figure out what happened to them in their relationship. But nah, like I just noticed the differences in culture. So if I was gonna trust someone, you got to trust people to be who they are, right? But I
Right.
look at the culture to see how they were shaped by their environment and their culture, and that's why I tend to lean towards Asian women. Because I mean, it's getting popular. It's a lot of brothers, it's a lot of passport bros and Joes traveling to these Asian countries to find traditional women, and there's some there's good and bad in every culture, and there's traditional women, and then there's progressive women. Um, but when I do pay attention to the environment, the family, and it's like the women that I dealt with in China or Asia, they don't want to embarrass their family. They don't want to behave in a way that brings shame to their family. Like those societies are kind of shame based, right? Like the loss of face is a really big thing. Matter of fact, oh my gosh, that's a whole nother topic. Losing face in Asia or specifically in China, so much of their behavior was predicated upon of not losing face, right? Not being embarrassed in front of other people. So consequently, their behavior um, is affected by that. So I don't think a girl would be caught out with you and then have her friends see her with another man in some short period of time. So because of that, they don't really monkey branch as much because it would bring shame to them, even just in their friend group. If even if it wasn't their family, just their friend group will possibly see them in some kind of way. So I think that governs their behavior as to why they don't monkey branch. And then, like I said, with those group dates, if you're going out with like four of her friends and three of your homies, and everybody took time out of their schedule to like meet up because this guy likes her and they want to see if there's a possible relationship. If they do that, there's no way if you guys get together and break up that within 7 days or 2 weeks she's going to be gathering that friend group again and meeting some whole new guy. They're going to think about her some type of way if they got to keep doing that.
Yeah, I agree. It's like there is a big, holding face, like you said. Uh, I'm all for women or people in general doing what they want, but there is a big, I guess, trend here. If you go outside in the U.S. and at least if you talk to the next 10 people, maybe one or two to three of them will have an OnlyFans, and that is not very common in China. It's more, like you said, they're taking time out of the day and their friend's day to see if this man is right for you. Yeah, it's definitely more face. You don't want to bring shame to yourself first, and then your friends and family.
Yeah, I agree 100%. If anybody comes across this stream, please like and subscribe. We're giving you a little information about the insights of three men from the USA who spent multiple years, 3, 4, 5, up to 11 years in China, living and growing up and working and the whole nine, pretty much every part of life they spent in China. We're kind of giving you the comparison between the social aspect of America and China from a man's perspective. So please like and subscribe. Click that notification bell if you can. Uh, Coach Winters, uh, what'd you think of, as far as that, just to get your opinion, is that something you saw as well, as far as the loss of face kind of dictating the behaviors and the environment, dictating the behaviors as opposed to Western society where there is shame, but it's kind of different?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think the concept of face is really important to understand about. Um, I think a lot of Asian cultures, but definitely over there, um, it's very, very important not to lose face, especially in public. Like to a point where sometimes they'd like almost rather lie than lose face because it's not because lying is good either, but because it's so important in the culture to everybody to have face and especially around the other people in public and everything, be presented a certain way. It's kind of interesting, but a very important concept for sure.
And to speak to what JoJo said, it kind of threw me off when I got back here and saw the OnlyFans and just how progressive it's become in America. No shade, whatever you want to do. I agree with JoJo. Whatever people want to do, they can do. But do you think that would even happen in China? Do you think that would even be a thing based upon their culture and their uh, tendency to want to maintain face?
Sorry, what would be a thing?
The OnlyFans and like just how kind of out there we are in
Um,
Western culture.
I'm sure it exists. Like, I'm sure it's out there. And I don't know, a lot of people are probably not against making some money, or there's people doing, I don't know. I'm sure if you looked hard enough, you'd find people doing it probably anywhere, right? Um, I don't think it's definitely as much in the forefront, especially the way the internet and everything is censored. Um, I think it's definitely a lot more restricted, and in the culture, um, restricted a little bit more in that way. And I don't know. It's like a double-edged thing because there's also the freedom of, we have freedom of speech and all that stuff over here, which is a bit more restricted.
Yeah,
Um,
so you got a few layers that would stop that. You got the Great Firewall, and then you've got the loss of face. I mean, that would legitimately bring shame to a family in China, no doubt about it. Like 10 out of 10. Um, and so you got a few different layers that probably prohibit something like that um, from occurring. Don't get me wrong, I agree with you. It's probably possible, but it's not going to be prevalent like it is. I'm sure you could probably even like look up OnlyFans stats and see like where their accounts are, where their OnlyFans models are, and I'm sure not very many of them are from over there. That's for sure. Oh, let's see. I was gonna ask one more question. What was it? Um, Wanting to get your perspective on um, how you felt about um, just the um, expectations, I guess, that a Chinese woman would have for a man, or what a Chinese man would have for a woman. Just to give a little backdrop. So there's like 30 or 40 million more Chinese men than women. I also think this kind of plays into the behaviors of the society and the women as well. So because there's like so many more men, women kind of have the advantage, right? Um, and so they can be more picky, but they're going to be more picky from like a life standpoint, not a physical standpoint or kind of the materialistic things that American women are more interested in. Well, not materialistic. I should just say they're into like security, and of course that's gonna make them more interested in finance and size and strength and all these sort of things. Um, would you think China is similar in that way? Because I think they are very picky because they can be because there's a lot more men than there are women, and it's hard. Men have to really prove themselves that they're deserving of a wife in China, and all men just can't get one. Plenty of men can't get one. Um, was that your experience? Was that your did you kind of see that as you were there and living, or did it not even factor in?
I mean, it didn't factor in necessarily as much for me, just given that I didn't grow up and everything there, and I can't tell you exactly what their experience would be. But it is very interesting to begin with because it is one of the few places, I think at least major places in the world that there are more males than females. Because on average, women do live longer, so most places have more women than men.
Yeah,
But
usually
there,
places have more women for sure. Yeah, China is one of the only places. What about you, JoJo? Do you think that factored in at all in their behaviors because there's a lot more men than there are women?
I feel like they do have the advantage. Obviously, there's more choices for a woman when there is more men. There is a little bit of the similarity where there is money in the factor between both, and I think that it should be for at least building a family. But I think the thought processes behind what women want in China compared to what women want in the U.S. So what women want in China, what I've generally seen is like, how well can you build a family? What is your job? Like, what is your job, and is it bringing an income? And then like how you are to her plus the family. And I can understand a little bit more of the materialistic side in the U.S. Like, do you have a nice car? Do you take me out a lot? Do you buy me a lot of like items? And I feel like we kind of in the U.S. we're running away from the simple fact of uh, just connecting emotionally instead of through objects or service.
Yeah, I agree. It seems to be about what can you do for me, but it's not for the in Asian countries. It seems like you have to prove yourself, but it's for the purpose of proving that you can um, build and manage and maintain a family. In the US, it's not really about family creation or building. It's just about stuff like having a lifestyle that excites you and makes other people jealous of you and just having a standard because they've seen it on social media. But it doesn't seem to be about raising four children.
Right, right. It's more of like, what can I get out of this, and how does this benefit me day to day?
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. So there's some similarities, but it's for different reasons.
Correct.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. All right. Well, we're coming up about on an hour, or actually a little over an hour. And I don't want to take too long with this stream. I think this was a good introduction conversation piece. I think we can do a part two because I got more interesting questions that I want to ask you too about your time there and get into more of kind of the nitty gritty. But I think we can do a part two with that the next time you guys got time and maybe even invite some more people and we can speak a little more about it and reconvene at a later date. What do you guys think?
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem, man. You there, Coach Winters?
yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, and once again, everyone, this has been Gamma Effect. We just want to give you guys a little bit of game, a little bit of information about what it's like in the Far East. Everybody's talking about Philippines and Thailand, but China, they got 1.4 billion people. It's the second largest economy. It's a place where you can really get busy there and do well. you can date and find a beautiful woman, and if you can get with her culture, you could probably have a really nice life. I met quite a few foreigners that were with Chinese women and had Chinese families. So it is something a lot of passport bros need to think about. But we'll come back with a part 2. For now, this is Gamma Effects, and I'll see you next time. Peace.